Alrighty, thank you so much once again, my good friends, for tuning in to Pure Fight Radio. This is episode 4. I am Brent Cristelli, and I am joined by my fantastic co-host, Manny David.
Hi there. And basically getting into some UFC 209 action over last weekend. Fairly eventful card, not so much the main event, but we're not shocked after watching the first fight. From that, those two, Stephen Thompson and Tyron Woodley, we'll get into that in a bit, but we are joined by a fairly special guest. Believe it or not, the creator of the show, my good friend, Dylan Bowker. How are you, Dylan?
Doing well. How are you boys doing?
Couldn't be better. I'm really glad to have you on.
Yes, thank you so much, Dylan.
Yeah.
And
it should be a lot of fun.
I would like to thank Dylan for creating Pure Fight Radio, and if it wasn't for him, me and Manny would not have the pleasure of doing the podcast once a week. So thank you so much, Dylan, and thank you for coming on the show tonight. We really do appreciate it. We're excited to have you on to talk some fights.
No, thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool that Pure Fight Radio is continuing on. Sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what's up. So UFC 209 main card, we might as well start off at the top. Oh, great. Woodley Thompson. Majority decision, did everyone kind of feel like this was the route it was going to happen? Yeah, I'm just kind of at a loss for words for how, stale, styles make fights sometimes, but that's what happens with these two. Super tentative. How did you guys feel about it?
We really did say this on the podcast, on the preview show, that this fight had the potential to be a snooze fest. And it exactly was a snooze fest. It's crazy. Like you said, styles do make fights. And it seems like Tyron Woodley and Stephen Thompson are almost equal when it comes to fighting. They're both super tentative about committing. If Tyron commits too much, Thompson lands a counter right or left and finishes the fight. If Thompson commits too much, Woodley lands a right hand, finishes the fight. And that's basically what you saw throughout the fight, except none of that was actually happening. Both guys were tentative throughout the entire 5 rounds. There were 2 moments of dominance displayed by a fighter in this fight, and that was by Tyron Woodley in the 3rd round and the 5th round. Aside from that, you saw a lot of, just waiting for the other to commit. We saw Stephen Thompson taking the center of the octagon, creating a lot of distance for Tyron to not be able to close the distance. And Tyron was content with, keeping his back against the cage for the majority of the fight. And what we saw play out was an extremely boring fight. You can make arguments that this might be one of the worst title fights in UFC history. Joe Rogan wouldn't say that, but a lot of fans, including myself, would probably say this was one of, if not the worst, UFC title fight I've ever seen. And that's not to say that, that's not to put a knock on either guy. I completely understand when it comes to styles make fights. I get it. The title's on the line. This is big for both guys. Neither guy wants to overcommit. Neither guy wants to make a mistake. But at the same time, you kind of have to think to yourself, man, there's, thousands of people here watching me. There's thousands of people watching on pay-per-view. I kind of want to put on a show for them. Both guys should, at least have that cross their mind at some point. But it really didn't. And Tyron Woodley took the most advantage of the fight that he could. He landed a solid takedown in round 3, was able to control Thompson for a solid half the round. And he was able to rock him really bad in the 5th round. And that's basically what won him the fight, because if that didn't happen, I don't think Woodley would have won this fight. And there's a lot of controversy behind this decision. I'm not too mad about it, just simply for the fact that Stephen Thompson really did nothing but control the center of the octagon. And while that did happen for the majority of the fight, and you probably could make an argument that Thompson might have been able to steal 3 rounds away, rounds 1, 2, and 4. But those, especially rounds 1 and 2, were so dry, and nothing happened that you could almost score both of those rounds 10-10. You can make an argument Woodley might have landed an extra strike in one of the rounds, vice versa. You might give one of the rounds to Woodley, you might give one of the rounds to Thompson. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and say that Stephen Thompson got robbed, because I don't think that was the case at all. I think this is a super close fight, and I think when you look at the fight, while the fight isn't judged from an overall perspective, you have to look at the fight from that in a certain direction and look at the rounds that Woodley clearly won and the 3 rounds that probably could have been toss-ups. And I'm really not angry at all that Tyron Woodley won. I thought he probably deserved the decision if anyone deserved it in this fight. And I'm just glad after this fight that we do not have to see this one again, at least for a very long time, hopefully. But Manny and Dylan, what do you guys think?
Honestly, I think the performance especially hurt Tyron Woodley because even beyond just the immediate fighting aspect itself, I mean, Tyron Woodley is a guy who's been calling for money fights recently. He wants to get in there with Nick Diaz. He's called out George St-Pierre. He's even called out Conor McGregor. I mean, all these names getting tossed out there. And he didn't put on a kind of performance where that kind of casual fan is going to be clamoring to see him fight any of those guys. So, yeah, I feel like he gets a Damian Maia kind of guy, which is good. I mean, that's meritocracy of sport, and Damian Maia is definitely deserving of a title shot. But, yeah, I mean, Woodley didn't do himself any favors in trying to get that elusive money fight.
Yeah, 1,000% true. If Woodley's looking for money fights and he's going out there versus Stephen Thompson and is essentially getting backed up to a certain extent the whole time, yeah, that doesn't look good. It really doesn't. On top of that, you might not even be considered that big of a favorite versus the guys that you were calling out. So, based on Woodley's, inconsistency as far as a dominant performance is concerned, yeah, like I don't really know where he goes besides the meritocracy of fighting, the Damian Maias or whatever contender is out there, Lawler again, who knows? But it's just, he's not going to get money fights fighting like this, if that's what he's after. And, you see him in the press conferences nowadays trying to elicit heat on some pro wrestling tip. And, he's trying to play that game, which is, if I could call it anything, it's cute. Because his fighting style, that was insane. That fight versus Thompson, the rematch. Yeah, if you give the fight to anyone, it's Woodley because, he had a little bit more dominant couple rounds on his side. 1, 2, and 4, to say that, one of them isn't at least potentially a draw, or, that Thompson won at least 3 of those. That don't look good. Yeah, for Thompson, yeah, but it's not like Thompson was the one who... I mean, Thompson could have, benefited from winning heavily, obviously, but he wasn't calling the shots, pre-fight. So that's what I'm saying with Woodley. It's just zero merit for what he thinks, would be good for himself and the fans. Just not sure where he goes.
Right. I do agree with that. I didn't really mention that, but I 100% agree with you guys. You can't really... And I'm a Tyron Woodley fan for sure. I do like him. I think he's a great fighter. I think he is the best welterweight in the world right now. You really can't call for those money fights when you're not putting guys out like Robbie Lawler every single fight. If he put Stephen Thompson out in the 5th round, maybe he could, even after all of the crap that happened in that rematch, he still might have had something. But he needs to put on more exciting fights. If he's going to start calling guys out, he needs to consistently put on exciting fights. We can't have instances like, the last Thompson fight was great, but it was the only reason the last Thompson fight was great is because Woodley rocked him around 4, had Thompson on the brink of defeat, and Thompson somehow rallied back and didn't get finished and then had a strong round 5. That's why that fight was super memorable for a lot of fans, a lot of people who watched that fight. Plus, that fight was on UFC 205 in New York. And, when it happened and the way it happened, it just went really well. But the way this fight went, it did not go very well at all. And like you guys said, I don't think Tyron Woodley has any business calling for fights with Conor McGregor and GSP at this point. With the way he's fighting, he probably will get a Damian Maia type of fight next if Maia defeats Masvidal at UFC. I think it's 211. I think they're fighting at UFC 211, I want to say. And then, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, we did have Nick Diaz, talking trash, mad trash from the sidelines. So, and Nick Diaz is available. So maybe they might make that fight. But aside from that, and aside from the winner of Masvidal and Maia, I don't know where Woodley goes from here. Obviously, GSP is, he's occupied with Michael Bisping.
He's out of the question.
And we will, right now. Yes, we will talk about that fight later. But yeah, I'm not really sure where Woodley goes from here. Definitely a Maia fight, or the winner of Maia and Masvidal, or maybe if he doesn't want to wait around, and obviously he didn't really take any damage in that fight, and if the money's right, maybe they'll finally throw Nick Diaz in there. But who knows? And I wouldn't be surprised if they threw Nick Diaz in there. He doesn't deserve a title shot at all. But when it comes to money, and the UFC at this point made it very clear they're about money, I wouldn't be surprised if they made that fight. And what's next for Stephen Thompson? I genuinely don't know. 2 fights that he drawed against Woodley in the first one, and he lost this one with a very boring fight. I'm not really sure where you go with Thompson.
He didn't do anything for his stock.
No, not at all. Not at all. But what do you guys think?
Like, I mean, in terms of rankings, maybe and in terms of how they book their bouts, maybe a Robbie Lawler or a Donald Cerrone, in the sense that they're both coming off losses and they could kind of carry on with their whole person who lost against person who lost methodology.
Absolutely. And
I think a Robbie Lawler fight's a good fight, definitely.
I think Thompson versus Cerrone stylistically is, just looks awesome. But, Lawler you can throw in versus any of these guys. And I think Lawler, if he somehow asserts himself into the title contender position again, at least will be exciting versus Woodley. I can't see them being tentative like the last Thompson fights. Of course, Duke got knocked out versus Woodley himself, but fireworks were bound to happen. And if we're looking for that type of excitement nowadays, that's what Lawler brings to the table. But with Woodley again, I don't think he has to necessarily fight more exciting, because I don't think he's that exciting of a fighter, never was. But he had those instances of being able to knock people out per se, but his 3 or 5 round decisions have always been fairly lackluster.
Right. Definitely.
Name one classic Tyron Woodley fight.
I can't.
There you go. So
Jake Shields, bro.
Right.
Yeah, Jake Shields.
The closest.
He got backed up the whole time. Yeah.
That was a 6-star match. That was Omega Okada caliber.
Oh no, you did not go there. The
two closest fights for Woodley to be even considered classic fights are his first one with Thompson, and the time where he almost decapitated Josh Koscheck.
Oh, that was a lot of fun.
That was fun.
Now Koscheck's getting jobbed in Bellator. How about that?
Basically.
How about that?
Yeah, I mean, Tyron Woodley's never really been that guy who's put on an impressive performance, other than, I suppose, that first Stephen Thompson fight that had some level of excitement to it. He's had a few finishes, but yeah, I mean, you guys were speaking to the inconsistencies, and that's kind of the champion Tyron Woodley has been, unfortunately. I feel like he'll be like a Benson Henderson type of champion, where he gets these certain outcomes in his fights whereby you don't really respect him or give him his due as champion quite as much.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. With Benson, at least, you could at least see... Okay, I don't think anyone considered, Benson a bad champion. It was just more okay, that decision was fishy, but he had enough going for him in which it's just okay, he's either the number 1 or number 2 guy. And Woodley is that to a certain extent, but, it's so much more painful to watch because Benson's 5-round decisions were at least somewhat technical and compelling, while rounds 1, 2, and 4 of this fight were just bleh. But that's just genuinely how I felt about this, because I'm oh well, can you at least take dude down? That's how I genuinely felt versus Thompson. I mean, Thompson's spacing is to be commended too, but for real, it's just you it's as if you expected Woodley to explode at any time. And I picked Thompson to win this. I thought maybe he'd steal a decision, and maybe throw a little bit more, since, you know, he'd be a little bit more urgent, you know, seeing as how the first fight went. So it's not like I can really blame Woodley. It's just, it takes two to tango, and you have like the most patient karate guy ever versus the most patient D1 wrestler with a right hand, period, who doesn't always have to use it. That's what you get with this kind of crap. So let's hope Maia can bring something to the table, or someone, assuming Maia gets by Jorge Masvidal. How is Masvidal a potential contender in the welterweight division in 2017? I don't know.
That's why.
I don't know either.
Yeah, like it's so weird. MMA is like, oh god, it's in a state of flux. I mean, it always is, but WME, baby, woo, woo.
New owners.
I can see Maia becoming champion if he gets the right opportunities. I mean, I think he's very talented. I mean, I'm pretty sure in his last few outings, I believe his last 4 fights, he only absorbed 13 strikes cumulatively. So, like, he's steamrolling these guys. Like, he's not just beating top contenders. Like, when he beat Carlos Condit, you can make the case Carlos Condit should have been the champion of the division at that point, and Damian Maia just kind of treated him like he was nothing, just an afterthought already.
Yeah, he got him. Like Carlos Condit got.
Oh yeah,
that was embarrassing. I don't even know what to say to that, because here's a guy who has X amount of ways to, you know, keep Maia at bay and or win the fight, and doesn't. So,
but the thing that baffles me is I believe I can't remember where I read this, but I want to say that Damian Maia wanted to wait for his title shot because he believed he earned it, which he did. He did everything in his power to earn a welterweight title shot. Yet here he is taking this fight against Masvidal, and while I definitely favor him to win that fight, it is a dangerous fight. One of the reasons he took that fight is because the UFC told him straight up, we're not going to give you a title shot if you sit around and wait around. So I don't even, like, if he wins, I mean, there's still trouble booking that fight because Woodley wants these money fights. The UFC is, you know, not super keen on probably marketing. Yes, Maia. They don't want to market Maia because Maia's not the most exciting fighter. So it's just, you know, at this point with the state that the UFC is in, as much as Maia should get a title shot, I'm almost not even sure he's going to get one.
He ain't getting one. Why would he get one? Like, what? Okay, Carlos Condit's a former... Yeah. Like, Carlos Condit's a former world champion, and if you're not going to get a title shot after this, like, what makes you think you're going to get one after beating Masvidal, who is, you know, a gatekeeper in lightweight and welterweight? So it's just whatever. At least that's just how I'm seeing it, because Maia's been so disrespected on this run of, 6-7 straight wins. But I don't get it. Like, he's someone you can easily hype up again as, you know, the best jiu-jitsu, you know, guy in the division again. Kind of like they did with him versus Silva until, you know, that debacle of a decision, or just fight in general. So maybe with Maia, like, there's a lot of ways you can come at it marketing-wise for whoever he does face, but it's just UFC doesn't want to come at it that way. I think with Maia, like, he's so obvious to look at, though. Maia's the one guy who will beat everyone who is not as obscenely athletic more than he is.
Right.
Like, if he's facing Robbie Lawler, Tyron Woodley, Stephen Thompson, guys like that, it's a hard ask to beat those guys because they're either going to go into space really well or just knock them out ASAP. But versus, like, some of these, you know, a little bit more chaotic fighters, you know, the Carlos Condits, the Matt Browns, the Neil Magny's, like, these guys, like, he'll just choke out.
For sure.
Without question. It just, I can't see a ground fight not happening in those fights, and that's exactly what we saw. But versus, you know, the aforementioned, you know, championship contender mainstays right now, Maia is pretty free. It's just like he's not considered a favorite versus any of those guys. And that's why he hasn't been getting any of these title shots, because it's just like well, number one, he's unmarketable, and number two, it's just like we don't think he can beat any of these guys, so why should we give him this merit? Let him make his performance of the night money, though. It is what it is. So I'm not sure what you do with him, but he's obviously an interesting fighter. I'm a big fan of Damian Maia because, I always was. Like, I always thought he was dope, but he's like my favorite one-trick pony in the UFC currently. If I could say it. I don't know how to respectfully say that, but he is. That's exactly what he is. Let's see. Did you guys catch Tamor versus Venata by any chance?
Yes.
How was that the co-main event? Like, that's insane, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I thought they should have I thought they should have just made Alistair Overeem Mark Hunt the main event. I mean, the co-main event. I thought that was kind of an obvious thing to do, but I guess not. So
I thought it was interesting because I think they were positioning Lando Venata to be some sort of star for them in the lightweight division because Lando Venata had that great performance against Tony Ferguson, even in a losing effort. He had that highlight reel stoppage of John McDessie, and I got the tone from the package that they were really hyping this guy up and presenting him in a certain way. It's like, oh yeah, groovy Lando. He's this chill dude who just has this free-flowing style, and he's going to, knock you out all the while. And, credit to David Tamor. Like, getting the W and staying in it all throughout.
Yeah, that's the thing. And he didn't dominate the fight, but he was definitely getting the best of the exchanges there.
Yeah.
Lando's style is so unique for being at Jackson's because he's so wild, which is something you don't really expect from that camp.
Cub Swanson vibes.
He's wilder than Cub Swanson, though. Like, I watch Cub Swanson go,
yes.
And I'm like, at least when I watch Cub Swanson, it's just like all the strikes, like, there's no wasted movement. Everything's compact. And it's just like, I look at Cub and I'm like, yo, I don't want to get hit by any of those hooks or any flying knees or anything like that. But I watch Lando, I'm like, yeah, there's a chance that will graze me. Like, that's just genuinely how I feel when I watch Lando Venata. And, like, he definitely wastes more energy than Cub. Cub's just a way more efficient fighter. That being said, yeah, like, that highly real knockout over John McDessie, I was like, that was cool. I'm like, okay, maybe they have something going here. I think Lando was not the co-main event, of course. It was supposed to be, Khabib versus Tony Ferguson. But Lando was slided in the third spot of this card, I believe. And like versus a guy without a Wikipedia page, which basically says that yes, maybe they were looking at Lando Venata to be, somewhat of a star, but obviously with this, that's not the case. So I don't know where he goes from here, but David Tamor, all the credit to him, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think David Tamor looked really good. I was kind of surprised. I obviously before the fight, before we even went into this fight, we just kind of assumed, hey, this guy doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Pretty sure Venata's going to take care of business here. That obviously wasn't the case. So Lando, like Dylan said, I really do think they're kind of trying to make a slight push for Venata. He's kind of got that wild, rambunctious style, but he's technical. He had that, like you said, the great fight against Ferguson. I thought that was awesome. One of the best fights of 2016. It's one of the best 2-round fights of 2016. And then, you had the highlight reel wheel kick knockout of John McDessie as well. So, you kind of have Venata on a little bit of a momentum streak heading into this fight against Tamor. And David Tamor just kind of stifled everything. He was able to... Venata really showed how hittable he was in this fight. Tamor really exposed that. Tamor avoided a lot of Venata's strikes and landed a lot of powerful strikes himself. Just kind of stuck to the basics, Tamor did, and it was really effective for him compared to the wild strikes that Venata was throwing throughout the fight. So props to David Tamor. I think he's a really solid prospect at this point. I really like to see what he can do from here.
I'm not gonna front. Like, I underestimated dude because like both of his previous UFC wins. It's not like those guys are in the league anymore, right?
Right.
So I kind of like, okay, David Tamor, he has some potential. good physique. For the most part, is technically sound in what you saw in that fight. But, like, I kind of just treated his wins over local level talent. That's just, what those guys were. He finished both of those guys rather easily. But, he came here, took care of business. I'm just not sure if Sweden can breed another title contender. You know what I mean? Especially in a division where it's, relatively deep, unlike, light heavyweight. Shout out to Gustafsson. But real talk, I like what I see from him at least. So that's that. How about the Dan Kelly versus Rashad Evans fight? And it's just sad to me because, like, Dan Kelly is, like, pushing 40. And I mentioned this on the previous podcast, but I remember Dan Kelly from the Olympics in 2000.
He's been through multiple Olympics campaigns. It's really remarkable. His knee is a sight to behold. Google, for anyone who hasn't seen it, Google Dan Kelly knee. It's bizarre how he can fight and compete with a knee that looks like that. He definitely has been through some wear and tear. Judo Dan Kelly, very based.
Yeah, Dan Kelly's a soldier. Like, don't get me wrong. Definitely. That fight sucked, though.
Oh, yeah.
Versus Rashad. It's just Rashad is like a shell of himself.
Absolutely.
Like, Rashad can go out there and basically, has a hand speed advantage. Technical boxing, is on his side, no doubt about it. But and he could just go out there and jab dude to death if he felt like it, and or just combination punch his way to a knockout or a decision victory. Dominantly versus the older, slower opponent, but that's not what happened. I just don't know how to account for that.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of a familiar pattern in Rashad Evans' career because you look when he has these long layoffs in between fights and he comes back to it. He has these listless sort of performances where he kind of looks gun shy and where he's not kicking it into the next gear and really ramping up at a certain time. You saw similar output in the fight with Lil Nog, the fight with Ryan Bader. It was kind of a similar performance against Dan Kelly.
Sad but true.
Yeah, definitely. I was watching this fight, and I'm a Rashad Evans fan. I do like Rashad, and of course, he's one of the pioneers for bringing the UFC to where it is today. And he was great at light heavyweight for so many years, and then he's just kind of, he just lost to Dan Kelly, who's pushing 40, like Manny said. Props to Dan Kelly.
Not a middleweight contender whatsoever.
Not at all. Props to Dan Kelly for sure. I think, I'm very happy for him. I'm glad he won the fight. Good for him. But, for Rashad Evans, this is not looking good. I know, like Dylan said, he does have a tendency to, when he takes long layoffs, when he comes back, he doesn't look as sharp, for sure. I think the Ryan Bader fight and as well as the Little Nog fight were huge examples of that. But, this is Dan Kelly. He's got to be Dan Kelly. And he just watching Rashad out there, while it was a long layoff, I believe Rashad's like 37 right now. I just don't know what Rashad has in him. Apparently he does want to come back and fight. I'm excited to see. Hopefully he bounces back quick and he doesn't have a long layoff, so we're kind of able to see what he can do at middleweight. I do think his physique looked great, and I think he looked pretty quick out there. He just didn't really pull the trigger, and he looked pretty hittable even against a slow 39-year-old Dan Kelly, and overall got outstruck by Dan Kelly just because of volume. Rashad clearly possessed the more powerful strikes, the more technical strikes. He just didn't really implement anything. He didn't really implement takedowns. He didn't implement his boxing, getting inside, landing combinations. He didn't really do any of that. Dan Kelly was able to just pepper him with strikes throughout the fight. And it was really disappointing to see Rashad Evans lose to Dan Kelly. I really hope Rashad can bounce back and at least look remotely impressive in his next fight. But, props to Dan Kelly. And it's sad to see Rashad Evans go this route right now.
Yeah, because he took a massive L versus Tex. And
big L. Huge L.
Like, I get that. Like, on number one, you're undersized for a division and arguably has been overachieving for many years in light heavyweight. I get that. But, the fact that you got shook and were gun shy at middleweight is really weird. It's not like you couldn't adjust to your own power or being able to, absorb shots at middleweight. I don't think that was going to be a problem for him, and I don't think it was a problem for him in this fight. It's just Rashad Evans has always been one of those fighters for me that I wish wasn't as reliant on counterpunching, because he typically has the hand speed advantage versus anyone he's fought. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Short of maybe Rampage or Machida, like, he's quicker to the punch than everyone. So I'm like, why don't you just go out there, put combinations together, and fight like Tony Ferguson or something like that? Because he's really capable of doing it. And he has good head movement when he's super on. But to go out there and not throw as many strikes as you should versus a guys who's striking you shouldn't respect, I just think is sad. But yeah, I think
he's a shot fighter.
Yeah, I mean, he just looked lost out there throughout the fight. He was standing right in front of Kelly the whole time, was reluctant to pull the trigger at just about every moment, landed a couple decent body kicks, but overall it seemed like he was lost. I mean, obviously he's 37 years old, so he's not the Rashad of old, but it just didn't... This is a fight Rashad should win 10 times out of 10, and he really just didn't show up. And like I said, maybe it was because of, like Dylan said, maybe it was because of the long layoff. And Rashad has a tendency to, have a poorer performance when he comes back. So maybe if he doesn't take as long as a layoff next time, and if he comes back against kind of a mid-tier opponent in the middleweight division, we might see a better Rashad Evans. But I don't see Rashad Evans making a title push at 37 years old in the middleweight division. I just don't, especially after this, whether or not it was a long layoff or not. I do hope to see Rashad bounce back and get a win, but as far as that goes, congrats to Dan Kelly, but this is a very disappointing fight for me.
Fair enough. There was like an obvious tone to that with the media beforehand. Like, you were talking about how 10 times out of 10 Rashad should win this fight, and even in the pre-fight media gatherings, there was that tone where they were almost discounting Dan Kelly, like, "Oh, were you surprised they offered you the fight with Rashad?" Like that, that sort of line of questioning. So, I mean, I think it surprised pretty much everybody. But yeah, shout out to Judo Dan Kelly. That's probably the biggest feather in his cap to this point. It would have to be.
Yeah. It's crazy as it sounds. It's like, oh man, to me, like, watching Dan Kelly do his thing to a certain extent versus Rashad Evans was like, it's just like, it's a win that shouldn't have happened, but, I'm glad for him that it did. It's kind of like how I feel about Tony Bellew, David Haye.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, how did this happen? But obviously, to any boxing fans out there, we know that Tony Bellew took advantage of a David Haye with an Achilles injury.
An Achilles tendon, good Lord, what an awful time. I mean, I feel bad for David Haye, but I mean, just what a gladiator, persevering through a lot. I mean, a number of rounds, a number of flurries. Shout out David Haye.
Yeah, he's a soldier. I'm sure a rematch will happen in that for them, because like that's a bad way to go. Sucks, but what can you do? But yeah, with Rashad though, it's just like he had everything going for him because of the fact that, like, it's not like he was really hurt at any time, right? So it's just like waiting for him to turn it on, and he just doesn't. So it just fell flat. What can he do? We don't know where either guy goes. It's just, you can't really treat either dude like a contender because of how old they are and how unimpressive either of them have won lately. I don't think Rashad's won in 4 years, so I don't know how much merit he has in matchmaking down the line, but we'll see. What about the women's strawweight fight? Cynthia Calvillo versus Amanda Cooper. And I'm not gonna front, and I'm so sorry if I come off as like a misogynist or anything, but this was like my bathroom break, and it was over like ASAP. So, did you guys catch this?
Yeah, Calvillo looked really good. Good for her. I can't lie, I wasn't super focused on the fight because I went to Buffalo Wild Wings with some friends, and this is where I got my food, so I was only halfway paying attention. So
you're the misogynist. I'm joking.
Both of us are, not just
Am I the only one who watched this fight?
Okay, Dylan, break it down for us then.
Okay, so what happened?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I was seeing some pre-fight stuff where Uriah Faber was talking up Cynthia Calvillo. You know, this is someone you've got to keep your eyes on. Cynthia training with Team Alpha Male. So I was like, okay, I'll see what's up here. And yeah, quick finish of Amanda Cooper. And I think Cynthia has a promising future in that division because, I mean, Team Alpha Male, you've got Paige Van Zandt training out of there.
Oh,
A known strawweight competitor. So yeah, I think
that hype train. Okay. Yeah, I know PVZ's your girl, bro, so I'm sorry. But
I picked Thug Rose. Come on now. I picked Thug Rose against Paige. Come on now.
Yeah,
Did you pick Watterson?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, you got to pick
Just
Watterson.
making sure. Michelle Watterson's dope. Like, she is super dope.
I mean, she's better at everything than Paige is. Like, Paige just has like a super high work rate, but
Yeah, I picked Watterson in that fight too, I believe.
Yeah, it's just like Paige has like, she's like technically not great anywhere, which is sad, but she's super athletic and she pushes pace.
The UFC was super, super hype when Paige landed that switch kick KO. And then they were super hype about that, and then that kind of went down the drain.
Yeah, like when they're golden retrievers, if you will, in Paige Van Zandt and Sage Northcutt losing in the same night.
Golden retrievers. Oh my goodness. No knock on Paige either. She's a solid fighter. She's just not quite. If she fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk, that would be a decapitation.
Oh God, please, no. God, no.
That would be death. They would be burying a grave for Paige Van Zandt inside the octagon. No offense to Paige. I think she's awesome. She's a great fighter. Just when it comes to the top tier of the division, we saw what happened against Thug Rose.
Yeah, she's just not that caliber. She's like a top 15 around there. Sort of caliber strawweight, I would say, but when she faces people in the upper echelon of the weight class, it's not a good time. I mean, you definitely see the large holes in her approach to it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'd say Calvillo has like the higher ceiling out of the two, if anything.
Oh yeah, she looked solid from what I saw. She took the back fairly quickly and locked in that choke. Mm-hmm. She did a great job, and I do think she's got definitely a higher ceiling than Paige Van Zandt. She just looks more technical out there. She looks more comfortable. She looks like she actually does have some potential within the strawweight division to be a title contender. She possibly could one day, depending on how things go. But yeah, I mean, I think she looked really good. Props to her.
Yeah, respect. All I caught was like the finish on like I think like a zombie MMA gif. that's like literally all I saw.
Zombie Prophet. Yeah, classic.
Zombie Prophet, OG. But like
OG Zombie Prophet.
Yeah, for real he is. But this all I can say is like Cynthia Calvillo beat a girl with a 500 record. And I'll just take that with a grain of salt, especially with how barren this card is, and obviously women's MMA is still developing. But I'm a fan of the upper echelon of that division because Joanna's perhaps the second or third most dominant champion in the UFC currently. So there's a lot to be said there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, besides her, besides Demetrius Johnson, who's like pound for pound best.
Joanna's up there for sure.
Right? Like Dylan?
I mean, you think you
have to put her up there.
Yeah.
You go down the weight classes and you really think about it. Heavyweights, anyone can win a heavyweight fight whenever the right punch is landed. Light heavyweight, obviously John Jones, and he is losing because of himself. So when John Jones comes back, obviously there's that. Middleweights ruled by Michael Bisping right now, which is a travesty.
Stop.
Tyron, the welterweight.
Bisping pound for pound.
Oh God, my brain hurts because
that hurts. Please stop. Oh God. But, Tyron Woodley, I could see the welterweight title changing hands, and probably within the year, I could.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor, I could 100% see losing the title in his next fight, should he ever fight at the correct lightweight title challenger, whether it's Nurmagomedov or Ferguson. I could see him losing. I don't see Joanna Jędrzejczyk losing at all. I also don't see Demetrius Johnson losing at all, nor do I see John Jones losing, so... Those are the top three, really.
Those are the three gods, but for me, it's not like Jones is on the roster.
No, not at this point. And even if Jones comes back, I mean, if he were to face Anthony Johnson, good lord, who even knows what could happen in that fight?
I think that is, oh God, I'll have a better opinion on that after Anthony Johnson's next fight.
Me too, for sure.
But, oh God, because
I want to see a heavyweight John Jones. I want to see him move up.
He's got to come back first.
Yeah, you got to come back first. Yeah, heavyweight John Jones would be tough. Like that'd be dope because, it'd be interesting seeing this guy neutralize everyone's power at the division, and that's kind of what he does in 205 anyway, because he's never really the bigger puncher. John Jones, right?
For sure,
he never is. So yeah. For him to be able to go out there and space with his oblique kicks and being able to close distance at will is really, it's really cool because I don't think I've seen a more unique fighter in that regard. I think John Jones, if he wanted to be, is the greatest of all time. But yeah, obviously he's marred by controversy after controversy. But him in the heavyweight division would definitely be a really fun prospect. Speaking of the heavyweight division, Alistair Overeem, my man, Overeem baby, that's what's up.
Ubereem, he landed the Uber knee.
Former Demolition Man.
The Demolition Man, he'll always be the Demolition Man to me. And the reason being is that it's either he destroyed you, you got demolished, or he did. And because the Demolition Man made sense one way or another, no matter what. Back when you'd watch Overeem fights and someone was getting finished, no matter what. I'm talking about his Pride run, right?
Carrying the big novelty hammer and Pride, yeah, those were the days.
Oh, you gotta love those days. Yeah, so fun. The hammer. Oh God.
This fight actually has ties to Japanese MMA as well because Overeem and Mark Hunt had their initial fight in Dream, absolutely. Which was a quick submission. And yeah, I mean, a cool performance in the sense of Overeem being in the hospital. He had issues with food poisoning as early as the morning of the day of the fight itself. But, I mean, rallied, got in there, and just what a knockout. Connected with that knee and then got a follow-up left hand in there eventually and just brutal face plant KO.
Yeah, what's the matter, Overeem, with your food poisoning? Horse meat too rare or something?
Yeah, they don't make the horse meat properly out there.
I don't think they're preparing it properly out there in Nevada. But real talk, Mark Hunt is obviously a soldier. Let's not take anything away from him. Fight was kind of whatever up until that finish, though, right?
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't the most exciting fight. I thought Overeem fought a smart fight. I was happy he did. I was rooting for him even though I picked Mark Hunt because I do like me some Uber knees. So it was good to see Overeem land one of those ridiculous knees and put Hunt out. So good for him. Should he be the title holder right now? He definitely could if he fought a smarter fight against Miocic. But that's Overeem. Like you said, he either demolishes people or he gets demolished. So. Next fight, like I'm saying, Francis Ngannou. I think that should happen. If that does, the loser is demolished. So
that is a really big measuring stick for Francis.
For sure. I think it'd be perfect.
I think that would be, I'm trying to think of what else you can make for Francis, but that'd be a hell of a fight, obviously. Francis Ngannou coming off that Andrei Arlovsky win. Andrei Arlovsky was showing signs of a resurgence up until he started to, get knocked out again. Shout out to St-Pierre. But real talk, he was on an absolute tear after fighting Brendan Schaub. He beat Bigfoot via knockout. Travis Brown, made Frank Mir look relatively easy. But yeah, obviously dude's been on a downswing, capped off by that Francis Ngannou, TKO, and I'm not sure how much merit I hold in Francis's record lately. To be kind of up there ASAP versus Overeem. Yeah, I know dude's had 5 fights in UFC already, but I feel like Francis has been kind of what's it called, protected to a certain extent, because he's been an overwhelming favorite versus everyone. So maybe he fights. I'm trying to think who's in the heavyweight division who's going to be healthy.
See, I'm trying to. I'm going through the heavyweight division myself. I mean, you throw him against Travis Brown. I don't want to see that. There was a rumor that him and Struve were going to fight, which I mean, that wouldn't have been the worst matchup.
Oh, I know. I mean,
if it wasn't for that pesky drug testing, Barnett would be the most key fight.
That is true.
Yeah, and now
sure.
Barnett's getting the job to Bobby Lashley in TNA.
Ugh. Or even like
Patron eventually.
Or even like
yeah.
Or even like I think like a Ben Rothwell would be one of like a perfect test for Ngannou.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking, Ben Rothwell, Roy Nelson,
one of those
type
two.
like that. Yeah, because Overeem is pretty much this kind of reasserted himself into the title picture ASAP. I don't think he should waste any more time, especially when all of the other contenders are either A, hurt, or B, he's already beat. So I'd love to see Overeem in there with Stipe ASAP, but that might just be me. But especially when he had that fight almost won, I'd love to see that happen in like Europe or in Vegas. Would be cool. Shout outs to the heavyweight division though, because I'll take any heavyweight fight I can see because we never see them.
Very true.
I'm just not sure what to say there because if it wasn't for that godsend of an uber knee finish, that fight kind of sucked, right?
For sure, it did. It wasn't the best.
It sort of looked like his performance against Roy Nelson, where he kind of worked that cautious sort of game plan, and credit to Overeem. I mean, he sort of has to against guys that are that heavy-handed, against the Roy Nelsons and the Mark Hunts of the heavyweight division. But yeah, it was definitely a quality finish, and Overeem's kind of in an interesting position. I think he especially benefits if Dos Santos wins this title match. I don't know that they would necessarily be keen to book Overeem Miocic again, even though they should, and he did have his moments in the fight and look pretty quality. But yeah, I think he benefits more so if Dos Santos comes out of that situation with the title.
Yeah, which I
agree.
Can't see happening. Like, sure, JDS has the hand speed advantage over Stipe Miocic, but oh god, I think Stipe is better everywhere at this stage of their careers, which is sad because JDS was such an athletic specimen for the heavyweight division when he first started. He was faster than everyone. He was quicker on the trigger than everyone. Good spacing. Did a decent job of cutting the cage off versus grapplers. He was a scary dude. And he had a meteoric rise, which resulted eventually in Cain Velasquez beating him in the rematch. And he's been, to me, kind of shook ever since. But obviously, he's beat Stipe before.
Right? I will say he did. I mean, like you just said, he did beat Stipe already. But Stipe has obviously gotten a lot better since then.
I wouldn't say he got a lot better. He just tightened up.
That's definitely better analysis of it.
I don't think he added anything new to his skill set. I just think he's training smarter and looks like the better game planner per se. That being said, with JDS's athletic gifts, there are you can win this fight and make it look relatively easy. But frick, if I'm Stipe, I'm thinking either because JDS is gonna look to counterpunch. I'm honestly thinking takedown ASAP.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, like you said, Stipe is kind of just tightened up his game. And, I mean, for JDS, he has beaten Stipe already. And like you said, recently he looked pretty shot. But I will say he did look a lot more calculated, and he looked better against Ben Rothwell than he has recently. So that is saying something.
The fact that was a number one contender match is
pretty bad.
It is bad because it's not like he freed Ben Rothwell up. It's just wow, these are potentially the second best heavyweights in the world. The way they're making this fight up to be, no way. So,
well, the thing is, I don't think they really could get any other title challenger for Stipe because he just beat Overeem, he just beat Verdum, and Cain Velasquez can't stay healthy. So really the only other option was JDS, who just came off a win. I don't really know who else you could have thrown in there against Stipe. So, I mean, I can't really knock them for it, but it, like you said, it doesn't really make too much sense at the same time.
Yeah, but that's the heavyweight division, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. The rest of 209, Tabura beat Henrique. Elkins with a comeback win over Bektic. Alcantara over Sanders. Godbeer over Spitz. Pedro over Paul Craig. And Alberto Morales versus Andre S. I'm not going to bother pronouncing that name. That being said, we have some announcements. Notably, Georges St-Pierre announced as the middleweight contender versus Michael Bisping. How do you guys feel about that, Dylan? Hello?
It's a very... I'm having some audio issues on my end, but that fight is sort of indicative of the era that we're in right now, Bisping and GSP, because you have the whole... They're definitely going to milk the angle of if George wins this, he's going to have belts in 2 different weight classes, and they're going to put him in... And then you logically could go with a Conor McGregor fight down the line with that sort of tagline if St. Pierre were to win this fight, which, I mean, I think people are over-exaggerating a little bit how winnable of a fight this is for Georges St. Pierre, but, I mean, at the same time, if GSP is going to beat anyone at middleweight, it's probably going to be Bisping, right?
Yep.
100%.
And he's not a heavyweight. He's not a favorite versus Yoel. He's not a favorite versus Luke Rockhold, or
he's not a favorite against any top contender. I don't think he's a favorite against any one of them. I don't think.
Jacare, no way. Yeah.
You can make an argument Bisping isn't even a favorite over the top 10 of the division.
I mean, he's not a favorite versus the top 5. That's right. Bisping got there because Rockhold didn't try, and because he got lucky in the UK again versus homeboy Silva. So I'm just tired of seeing Bisping get gifted stuff, and it's not his fault because it's not like he's paying off the judges, but it's sad to see the middleweight division come to this, and the fact that we have to resort into, calling upon a retired fighter to perhaps revive a division that he hasn't even fought in. So it's
simple to revive the middleweight division. You throw Yoel Romero in there against Bisping, whether or not it's a marketable fight or not, and you watch Yoel destroy Bisping, and you watch the middleweight division go back to normal. It's simple as that. The UFC didn't want to do that. Georges St-Pierre came back. He really wanted the 185-pound title fight, something that he did not go after whatsoever when he was still fighting against Anderson. He didn't want any part of Anderson Silva, and I think you can really see that now that he obviously wanted zero part of Anderson Silva throughout the tenure of his welterweight title reign. And for him to come back and see, oh, hey, Michael Bisping's the champ, let me try to get in there and win this title fight. So that's kind of the landscape you see, and you have Michael Bisping, who is, whether or not the UFC is making these fights, Michael Bisping's clearly avoiding the top contenders, because I truly do believe he knows he's not a favorite against them, and he knows he's probably can't beat them. But, really it's, while Michael Bisping is the one, clamoring for the GSP fight, for, this fight, that fight, the Dan Henderson fight, it's, while Bisping is the one calling out for it, the UFC is the one to blame for actually putting it together. They shouldn't have put it together. This fight shouldn't have been made at the end of the day. I do think this fight could favor either one of these guys. I haven't really done too much analysis into it. You can make an argument for Bisping. You can possibly make an argument for GSP as well. It's been a long time since we've seen GSP. We don't know how he's going to be when he comes back. So I might favor Bisping at this time. But, this is just one of those fights where it's like really scratching my head why they even made it. I understand it will probably do a lot of pay-per-view buys, and it's good for the business. But at the end of the day, your merit is just continuing to go down as the Ultimate Fighting Championship when it comes to, making fights that make sense. Having GSP come here and get a title shot after 3.5 years of not fighting is basically equivalent to, let's say, a Tom Brady who won the Super Bowl this year. Let's say that he comes back with the Patriots 3 years later And before the season even starts, it's predetermined that the Patriots are going to play in the Super Bowl with Tom Brady. It's a similar analysis. It's a similar analogy to that. So, as a hardcore mixed martial arts fan, this fight is not something I want to see. As a regular casual MMA fan, I'm sure a lot of people are happy about this. And I'm sure
here's why they shouldn't, because Georges St-Pierre has, despite his dominance, people would fall in love with how nice he is and stuff. But it's not like they were in awe of how, awe-inspiring his fighting style was. Yes, he would take advantage of where you're weakest, and that's what you should do in MMA. That being said, it's just like they were always left unhappy after his performances in the most dominant part of his title run. So it's just going to be another classic case of GSP getting, said fight. People are like, oh yeah, we love GSP. And then you get to the decision and you're like, oh man, I wish he fought this way again. Especially here in Canada, where we have certain GSP heads who think like he's like, the GOAT. And like literally he goes into fights as if like, he's supposed to like dummy dude, but he only takes like 4 out of 5 rounds in a lackluster manner. Like, I don't know what people are expecting here as far as a good fight is concerned, because we're going to see, like, arguably the number 5 middleweight take on a guy who hasn't fought in X amount of years. Like, why is this a good thing? Like,
it's not.
So, I'm good, personally. I'm done with this. I think that Georges St-Pierre doesn't have a lot of ways to win this fight. I just can't see him jabbing Bisping to death. I can't see him taking him down for 5 rounds or like mixing it up for 5 rounds. I can honestly see it being as stale as a Woodley decision. That would suck, but I wouldn't be shocked. But like Bisping, punches and bunches, don't get taken down, don't get clinched up. For whatever reason, like, I think his style nowadays is really conducive to stealing decisions. So I can definitely see that. Who knows? It's just a fight that we're not interested in. Like, Dylan, does this actually intrigue you whatsoever as a fight fan by any chance?
No, it really doesn't. It's a fight for the casual fans that's going to sell, and there's like a number of different narratives you can work from this fight to appeal to them, like the whole aspect of both of these guys being the winningest fighters in Octagon history. What happens when you pair them up with one another? George is the former champion who is, who left without being defeated, air quotes. Like, we all know he lost to Johnny Hendricks, but I mean, the record is as it stands, so I digress. But I mean, yeah, I mean, the fight, the actual competition that's going to happen, I'm not very interested in, to be honest.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Dylan, and really starting to think about it, I kind of just, as soon as the fight got announced, I didn't really do any type of analysis. It was just kind of like, oh, this is a pretty good chance for GSP to win the 185-pound title against Bisping. But really thinking about it, the way Manny was, we were talking before we even started the podcast. And Manny brings up a good point. Bisping is not the type of fighter to get jabbed to death. And he is the type of fighter to stuff a lot of takedowns and have very good defensive grappling. And Bisping might actually be a pretty bad matchup for GSP. So this might not be the big swan song return for GSP that everyone thinks it's going to be, which would be pretty interesting and cool at the same time as well. But, this fight doesn't interest me at all. Like Manny said, I'm done thinking about the fight. Let's go ahead and move on to something super quick something that didn't happen at UFC 209, and I know we don't have too much time left on the podcast, but Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson did not happen, which was probably the saddest moment of my entire weekend.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate because I'm of the belief that Khabib, if he does get by Tony Ferguson, is a style nightmare for someone like a Conor McGregor. If he is to fight in lightweight again. I think that all it takes is like one takedown, pretty much, and he can beat anyone in the world, which is scary. Like, he's one of the most dominant top position grapplers in MMA. He has various ways of taking you down. He takes punishment really well. Again, he hasn't been beat yet. Gas tank isn't an issue when he's healthy. So I can easily see him going 5 rounds if he needs more time than 3 rounds. Yeah. So Conor McGregor, like, that would be a really interesting fight, but it's something we can't think about unless, you know, this kind of fight happens for Khabib, because it's not like Tony Ferguson's a marquee matchup, but it was the interim title, you know, for Pete's sake, that this was for. So it's just super unfortunate. What can you do? Good Lord. And I feel bad for Ferguson too, because Ferguson could have flexed on him this fight easily.
For sure.
Because Ferguson, you know, has been, you know, looking sharp to a certain extent. I like Ferguson's game too, you know, sprawl and brawl fighter, but as far as the brawl aspect of his game, like, he's not traditionally a boxer, but his boxing's pretty sick. Punches and bunches, uses good head movement, cuts off the cage really well. Good power as well, and then, you know, if he drops you, he's going to look to TKO and or Darce choke you, which I think is
Snap down City.
Lately. Yeah, that's what's up, right? So, how do you feel?
Yeah,
about
I think, well, real quick, like you said, with Khabib getting a takedown and basically beating anybody, I think probably the one fighter in the lightweight division that probably wouldn't happen to is Tony Ferguson. So that's, potentially. Although I did pick Khabib to win.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's just one of those things where it's really sucks this fight didn't happen. You know, moving forward with the lightweight division, it's kind of in a standstill right now, because you've got Conor McGregor trying to fight Floyd Mayweather, and then you've got the interim title fight that just fell through. So what really happens next at lightweight? Nate Diaz doesn't have a fight, and everyone has been thinking, and Conor McGregor's coach John Kavanagh was saying, "Oh, when we come back, we're probably going to want to fight Nate Diaz." What happens at lightweight now, for God's sake?
I mean, I'm tired of trying to fantasy matchmake in my head now, because of the fact that, you know, like MMA's for a show, you know, like, as far as like trying to create a sporting scenario, like, I think I'm done with it, like, and not just in lightweight, but just in anything, because it's got into, you know, like, the freak show mentality of combat sports with, you know, Conor trying to get big money fights with Floyd Mayweather or Nate Diaz in MMA. But we forget about, you know, the sportsmen out here who are trying to, you know, do their thing. And as a result, you have the lightweight division in a standstill, to a certain extent, welterweight's in a standstill too, as well as middleweight division. So, I don't know.
And the featherweight division was in a standstill.
Yeah, I mean, like that's way more forgettable now, because there's no way, like, he'd end up cutting that much weight to fight there consistently again if he wants these title fights. But yeah, real talk, I'm just good. I don't know what else to say, because like I don't want to ever like beat myself up after, you know, just like thinking this is gonna happen and be like, F, like, this is like, really, like, this guy's trying to like make a fight with Floyd Mayweather happen. I feel like the Mayweather fight has as much likelihood of happening as Trump actually building a wall. Like it just, I just can't see it happening. So I don't know what to say. But yeah, like, Dylan, how do you feel about that? Like, just the state of mixed martial arts right now.
Very entertainment driven. It's a little unfortunate. I mean, you see certain people who it kind of works for them, like a person like Khabib Nurmagomedov. They're the perfect confluence of having some marketability aspect where they have a fan base and some level of notoriety, but also there's the athletic meritocracy aspect where, you know, just like clear cut one of the best fighters in that weight class. So, and I mean, Conor McGregor, to his credit, is one of those guys like that too. I mean, just a top-notch fighter who happens to be able to sell a fight. But I mean, yeah, sometimes certain things slipping through the cracks lately. Like, I mean, you look at Bellator, for instance, like that card they did with Kimbo and Dada and Hoist versus Ken. Like, that was the biggest show they ever did. So, I don't know. You've got Ryzen coming back. All those trippy fights they're putting on there. Like, I don't know. It's an odd time to be an MMA fan.
Yeah, RFF, baby. I want to see more, just because I...
Sakaki Barasan.
Oh, God, no. Oh, man. But, like, I've been... like, when it comes to the sport now, like, I say sport in quotation marks, like, I'm just so about the idea of it just being for marks now. Whether you're, like, a hardcore mark like us or, like, the casual mark, it's just a mark sport. Yeah. So, like, I'm ready to watch IGF cards where it's half pro wrestling, half MMA. Like, that's the point I'm at. Because
it is. It's gotten there.
Like, it's a farce, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Some people might take that disparagingly, like the Habibs of the world, but I'm sorry, like, this is the system you're in. Like, I wish I could say otherwise, but I can't. So, that's what it is. Anything else we should touch on by any chance?
How about just super quick, we make some quick picks for this fight night happening this weekend?
Oh, right, there's a fight night. Just see, like,
yeah.
Anything that's not hype, it's just like...
Right. It's just like, oh, there's some fights happening this weekend. Oh, I forgot it was happening. All I really focus on at this point, and even I consider myself a hardcore fan, aside from, the bigger Fox cards that happen from, once in a blue moon, is, the pay-per-view events. And even, some of the pay-per-views have been pretty, pretty lackluster. So even when that happens, I'm not super into them. And I'm just kind of, oh, there's a pay-per-view this weekend. No big names are on it.
No, I feel you there. What's it called? Like, we might as well, like you said, do quick picks for UFC Fight Night, Belfort versus Gastelum. We'll just do the main card really fast. Oliveira versus Means in a rematch. Like, who do you got, both of you?
Thinking Dirty Bird.
Yeah, same.
I'm more inclined to think Tim Means gets it.
Yeah, just, like, more conducive to making it a dirty fight than
lives up to the name. He's a dirty bird.
He is the dirty bird, and I just despite the environment and the morale boost, does Oliveira get a highlight reel knockout? I'm saying no, so I think Tim Means wins at least 2 out of 3 rounds. Brent, you too?
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Tim Means as well.
Okay, Betch Correa versus Marion Renault. Who wins this fight?
I have to think Betch wins this fight. I don't know. I mean, bantamweight's really an interesting weight class. There's so much parity in that division. I mean, Renault very well could beat Betch, and then all of a sudden she's got someone on her resume who once contended for the championship in that weight class. So, I mean, kind of an interesting class. I'm going to concretely pick Betch Correa, but, at the same time, wouldn't be surprised if Renault were to pick up a W.
If Betch can go 3 rounds and steal a fight versus Jessica I, although I didn't think I thought she beat Jessica I think she beat Renault. MMA.
I think so too.
Woo.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that as well. I'm gonna go with Betch Correa, but
okay.
Not really. I just not too much interest for me into that fight.
Yeah, because bantamweight is just so everyone just trades fights. I mean, that's how
it's free at this point.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a free for all. Yeah. Juicier Formiga versus Ray Borg. Who do you guys have?
Really intriguing fight, I think. Because Ray Borg's been performing quite well lately. He's a guy who's rising in the flyweight division. Juicier Formiga, the former #1 ranked flyweight before the division even came to the UFC. So, yeah, I mean, could be a passing of the torch sort of a moment. I'm inclined to think Formiga gets it done, maybe with a decision.
Yeah, it sounds right.
All right, yeah, I can agree with that as well. Probably gonna go with Formiga. Ray Borg did look pretty good in his last fight, though. I will say so.
Yeah,
you never know.
The fact that I think that if Juicier Formiga, if he wins this fight, and he was like the long time, #1 of this division before it manifested in the UFC, I think a lot of marks would love to see him versus DJ. That would be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So
for sure,
he's got to get past Wilson Hayes first.
Wilson Hayes is nuts. Wilson Hayes been putting in that work. So, I mean, wait, Juicer Formiga already beat Wilson Hayes, though, right? So
He did.
yeah, so there's that. Who knows? But Wilson Hayes looked pretty strong versus Sasaki. But at the end of the day, I think Sasaki was a minus. He was like a plus 600 dog because he came in on short notice. So I don't know how much water that holds, but
Hayes is fighting DJ next.
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, so there's that. Team Alliance, woo, that's what's up. Yeah, Edson Barboza versus Beneil Dariush. Probably the best fight on the card. Who do you guys have?
I'm gonna. You can go first.
I gotta say Barboza.
Yeah, I gotta go with Barboza too. It's just like I can't see Barboza getting into a position where they're scrambling and Dariush can tap him. For the most part, I just think the better striker wins.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Barboza's been on quite the tear of recent. He beat Anthony Pettis, even though Pettis is kind of a slightly kind of a shot fighter at this point. And Gilbert Melendez, he beat him as well. Melendez is still, kind of on the cusp of being a top contender. So those are two solid wins in a row for Barboza. Definitely the two biggest fighters, the best fighters he's ever beaten. So props to Barboza. I think he gets it done here. I'm not probably by decision.
Okay. Mauricio Shogun Hua versus, Dylan's favorite, John Vellante.
My boy.
This is.
I mean, I gotta go. I'm a pride never die sort of dude. I can't lie.
Yes.
I'm kind of inclined. Yes. Kind of inclined to go with Shogun in this situation. I mean, he's certainly not the fighter he was back in the Pride days, but I think Vellante leaves himself open to certain things that even a fighter in Mauricio who is waning times can exploit. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Shogun was able to stop Vellante. But conversely, I mean, who knows? Vellante could put Shogun to sleep. He's kind of got a bit of wear and tear on the chin and just in general. But yeah, I guess I'll pick Shogun. Pride never die.
Yeah, I think Vellante has like zero striking defense, but at the same time, he's heavy-handed himself. So it's like whoever's quickest to landing a punch. Does Vellante go out there and counterpunch? That's really interesting. If I'm Mauricio Shogun Hua, or Shogun's going to go out there looking like, with his Muay Thai stance, like the way he fights, like, is just like pretty traditional, standard, shoot to box Muay Thai style. And eventually he just explodes on you and just loses all, compactability because he's just, throwing X amount of strikes. At least that's old school Shogun. But, I really hope he's just not looking to trade with Vellante because Vellante is just looking to land something eventually and maybe weather that storm. But I think Vellante's striking defense is so bad that he can't do that, and I think Shogun knocks him out.
Yeah, Shogun all day long. I love me some Shogun Hua ever since the Pride days, ever since he was a brief UFC champion, and it's been very, very disheartening to see him go down the drain over the past few years, especially when he lost to OSP in less than a minute, which was
the worst.
That was
come on, guys.
heartbreaking.
He was supposed to lose that fight.
That was heartbreaking.
But the way he lost, it was just so pathetic.
It was bad.
It was like
even
show something.
Even when he lost to Dan Henderson the second time, he was winning the whole fight, dominating, and then he gets clipped with this giant Hendo H-bomb, and then that was that. It was very, very disheartening to see. Yeah, he lost to OSP in 34 seconds. Jesus. But
Henderson's sequence was kind of cool, though, because it was a new wrinkle to Henderson's style because he feigned the Greco exchange, and then he broke free and landed the H-bomb. I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, I guess the old dog does have a couple new tricks.
It was dope, but I've always been a Shogun guy. I've always been a huge Shogun guy, so it was very disheartening to see that. But I've got to go with Shogun here. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. Hopefully he keeps it up. I do not want to see him against top competition. I really don't, because if he does, he will lose 100% without a doubt. But I think he does get it done against Vellante. I think maybe you'll see some sort of similar type of James Tahuna knockout here, which would be awesome. And hopefully he gets it done within the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. So we're all unanimous on Shogun. We're unanimous on everything so far, but Vitor Belfort, Kelvin Gastelum, in the middleweight division, who do you guys have?
I think Kelvin Gastelum has the sort of style that, is known to break Vitor Belfort. I mean, if you look at a lot of Vitor's losses over his career, it's a guy who just keeps coming forward, who has a certain aggressive grappling style, who can put the pressure on him, and especially when that's coupled with power and strikes, which Kelvin Gastelum, I mean, hey, he has all of that working for him, I think. I see Kelvin Gastelum as a star on the rise right now, whether he's competing middleweight or welterweight. I think he's probably going to have to stay middleweight due to weight cutting issues. And I see Vitor Belfort as a very legendary fighter on the downturn. So I'm thinking Kelvin Gastelum. I would feel like he finishes him within, just based on the fact that it's a 5-rounder and Vitor Belfort kind of peters out after the first frame. So I'm going to say Gastelum finishes him at some point.
It's hard to see Gastelum, despite, fighting a guy who's formerly on PEDs, like, get finished. Like, Gastelum's been hurt. He's been able to weather every storm. But versus a downswing Vitor Belfort, can he weather that? I'm going to say yes. I think Gastelum wins either a 5-round decision, if not, and it's going to look super ugly, or B, he wins late, or mid to late, like anywhere from 2 to 4. I hope this doesn't go to 5 rounds. But, Gastelum, for me, just weather early Vitor storm, if possible. If not, clip him early yourself, or take him down early. But Vitor Belfort, obviously has the flash knockout power. It just, I think it's kind of a pick'em fight, but since I like Gastelum's more ways to win, I'm going to pick him. Brent?
Yeah, I've got to agree with everybody here. I think we're 100% on every single one of these fights. We agree on all of them, which is great. But yeah, I got to go with Gastelum for sure. Gastelum's been looking pretty solid in his past few fights, especially against Tim Kennedy, even though Tim came off a long layoff, and Tim Kennedy was never a great middleweight, and this is quite a step up. But you have to keep in mind, this is not TRT Vitor anymore, and this is not juiced up Vitor from back in the day.
TRT Tour.
This
is not TRT Tour.
That Sea Level Kane, I would have to say, and motivated BJ.
Oh,
basically.
God.
But
Motivated
Vitor,
BJ is the monster.
He was TRT
Vitor.
Oh my goodness, TRT Vitor is something else, man, something else. But he's long gone, and we've seen his body deflate. We've seen him deflate since, obviously, coming off of PEDs. We had the bad performance against Weidman. He lost against Jacques. I don't see him beating him unless he's able to put some classic Vitor combination together early in the first round. Even then, Gastelum has a great chin, even though he is typically a 170-pounder. I think Gastelum has been beefing up for this fight. Not sure how much merit there is to that. But I do think Gastelum's going to come in here and actually probably finish Vitor in the second or third round. I think the first round, if Gastelum's going to be able to weather the Vitor storm in the first round, I don't see Vitor causing many issues for Gastelum later on in the fight, especially if Gastelum implements his wrestling as well. I think Vitor is going to be in a lot of trouble, especially in the second and the third round. I don't think this gets out of the third round. I think Gastelum TKOs him.
That's fair. Yeah, just stylistically, you close the distance with Vitor in which he can't, run at you with punches. Like, you'll be okay. So Gastelum for the win, and I think that's about it for UFC Fight Night. Belfort versus Gastelum. So we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you to my co-host Brent as always, and of course Dylan, the creator of Pure Fight Radio, the OG himself. Thank you for stopping by, my friend.
I really enjoyed it, guys. Thanks for having me on. Hopefully I'm invited to be a guest in the future.
Absolutely, you're more than welcome. And real quick, if you don't mind, where can we find you? And what endeavors are you pursuing lately, podcast or professionally, lately?
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Dylan Bowker. Also, I'm a content provider for libertymultimedia.com. And I mean, even beyond what I'm bringing to that website, I think it's a diverse project that I'm very passionate about. I think all the contributors to that site are doing well. That's libertymultimedia.com. But yeah, I don't know. I guess you could find me on Instagram, Dylan James Bowker, swagging out with the hashtags and whatnot.
Yeah, that's my homie.
Yeah, boy.
Okay, so you guys heard it first. Again, this is Pure Fight Radio. We will leave all of the links related in the description below. Pretty standard. And yeah, Brent, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, once again, thank you, Dylan, for coming on the show. Thank you for creating the name Pure Fight Radio, and thank you so much for letting us continue the Pure Fight Radio legacy. And thank you for coming onto the show. We really do appreciate it. And yeah, you know, you can find me at twitter.com/bcristelli11 or at bcristelli11, or you can also find me on YouTube at youtube.com/BCMVP11. There are, once again, a couple of highlight reel videos on there. I made a Vince Carter highlight reel, and there's also a John Jones. There's also a John Jones versus Daniel Cormier preview you can see on that channel as well. And that fight never happened, so that both of those videos are pretty much gone. But I will be starting up a new YouTube channel here very soon. I keep saying it on each video, but you're going to see it eventually, and you'll be able to catch me on that eventually. Of course, follow us on Twitter at Pure Fight Radio or twitter.com/PureFightRadio. The Facebook like page will be up soon. And of course, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/PureFightRadio. And Manny, last but not least, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at youtube.com/CascadeSense, where I, believe it or not, will cover fragrance-related matters, which is, you know, awkward, but not awkward, but it's just different. But it's a lot of fun. I dropped a video today with my good friend Bradley. That was hilarious. You can find me at twitter.com/themannydavid. And yeah, again, all of the related links will be in the description below. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Dylan, for coming on the show tonight. We really do appreciate it once again. And thank you, Manny, once again for hosting this with me this week. We are going to sign out now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. And once again, please give this video a like and also give us a subscription. We would really appreciate it. Definitely follow us on Twitter. Follow us on our individual Twitters. And we hope to catch you next week. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys. Peace out.
Peace.